All right, we are going to listen to my friend Kerri Whipple. She works for North Dakota and kind of is in the head department for their ELL there. She oversees some things both in North Dakota and South Dakota, and she is going to explain a little bit about the WIDA consortium that South Dakota is a part of, as well as the website, the standards, and just some of the tools that they have. So here is Kerri.
So look at all the golden color. Am I still showing my screen? You guys can see this.
And I'm just going to hide the conversation
all
box.
All the states around us except the one south of you, and maybe the one to the southeast of you, are WIDA states. If you look at a CUME file for any student who comes from any of these places, you will see something that looks super familiar to you. If you have a student, I think we talked about this in the first week, but I'm going to reiterate it. If you have a student who comes to you from a WIDA state and you have an access score, you don't have to re-screen them. Okay? Let me say that again. If you have a current access score, which means they've taken access in the last year, not need to rescreen them. It's going to say, it should, say the same thing as what the access score in their CUME file already says. They're level 2.7, right? So go with it, okay? This is why it's super important for you to print out the scores and put them in CUME files, because all of these places where the kids are going to move to want the same consideration back. You shouldn't have to rescreen them. The kid already took it, okay? If they come from a state that's gray, it's not on this list. New York has their own test. Texas has their own test. California might be in Alpha 21 now. All the other small states are Alpha 21 states. They give a different test. It's similar, but not the same. And there is no calculator to say, like, this score on Alpha 21 equals this score on Access. So we do have to rescreen them. Okay, so they come from a non-WIDA state. We would need to screen them and get a current score. Nebraska's Alpha 21. So is Kansas, and so is Iowa. Just a little bit about the WIDA tools that are available. So the WIDA standards are kind of tricky. There are 5 of them. Social instructional language, language of language arts, language of math, language of science, language of social studies. WIDA believes a little bit different than Kerri believes, but that's okay. There are 5 clear, I would even say they believe they go beyond this because they have some examples for visual arts and performing arts. But they believe that these are the core 5 standards and that language resides in content. All of WIDA's standards in that thick standards document are examples of the ways that teachers might be using academic in their classroom. And WIDA would say they can't write the book of the standards because there are 6 proficiency levels, there are 13 grade levels, there are at least 5 standards, and there is no end to the ways that teachers might dream up to use language, academic language, in their classroom. So in their standards booklet, in that matrix, those are examples of the ways in which teachers might use academic language in the classroom. Yep, I will text Glenn. That's sharing. Okay, so I'll do that again. So if you click on wida.wisc.edu, you click up here on Resource Library. It's my favorite place to be. I can click on Topic, Standards. What was different before? And I'm going to click on English. Here are the 2012 English Language Development Standards. You can view and download this manual. And this is the standards document, the one that you get when you go to training. And this is just all the ways that teachers might use language in the classroom. There we go. So these are the strands. And in each of the strands, each of the model performance indicator. So here's a grade 6 example. Okay, and this is for writing. And for a level 2 student, it says describe choices based on rate calculations and real-life situations using templates and word banks with a partner. So this is a language of math standard, standard 3, okay, and the topic is on ratio and rate. So I'm going to go back to my PowerPoint for just a second. So this is WIDA.wisc, W-I-S-C, Wisconsin.edu, okay. Let me go back to this. I'll share like one more thing, and then we'll have to do the rest next week. So I want to just show you, WIDA also has 6 proficiency levels, we know that. And they test the 4 different domains of listening, speaking, reading, and writing. Okay? And this is a strand. This is an example of a strand. So each strand has a cognitive function at the top. In the old standards, they felt like, it seemed like lower levels of proficiency weren't able to do higher order thinking skills, which wasn't true. They just weren't able to demonstrate those same higher order thinking skills in the same way that more proficient students were able to. And so in the 2012 edition, they were sure that they put something like analyze across all 6 or all 5 levels to indicate that all these kids are analyzing. But the way in which they can show they're analyzing in reading for a level 1 is just identifying some language from illustrated text using word banks and with a partner. But a level 3 can categorize those passages based on narrative points of view from illustrated text using word banks with a partner. And a level 5 can do what the other kids are doing in this grade, and that is compare and contrast narrative points of view in extended text. And so this is a strand going across from the standards. It's an example of the way language might be used in a classroom in the area of reading. And so the content stem all the way across this strand is about language, about narrative points of view. And we can see narrative points of view is found in each of those boxes, right? The language function, how the student is communicating the message for a level 1 and 2 are both identify. For level 3, the student is going to categorize. For level 4, they're comparing. And 5 is comparing and contrasting. And then the supports really vary. Of course, there's more supports for a level 1. So they're using illustrated text with word banks and with a partner, which is very similar to what a level 2 is doing. By the time we move to level 3, we're still using illustrated text, using word or phrase banks with a partner. Level 4, we move beyond that. Now we're using extended text, and we've got a graphic organizer with that partner. And then level 5 doesn't have any support. The idea is by the time you get to level 5, you shouldn't need a lot of linguistic support. You should be acting like other kids from that grade, and that's what this is showing. So there are different kinds of supports. There are sensory supports, graphic supports, and interactive supports that are found within the sample standards. The way that WIDA is different from ELPA 21, ELPA 21 took California's reading language arts standards, and they use those language arts standards to build actual standards that show a scope and a sequence over time. I understand where WIDA is coming from in thinking that language is couched in content, but I think it's pretty heady for classroom teachers to get their arms around. I think when you use the reading and language arts standards as a jumping off point, it's a little more concrete for teachers to see like what really am I responsible for by way of teaching my EL students in the time that I have with them. And so again, I don't have to agree with WIDA. I love WIDA with all my heart. We can agree to disagree on this a little bit. It's not that I disagree with their intent or their philosophy, but I think it's just really hard to expect teachers to use something that we're only providing examples of, that we're not providing concrete, like this is what you're responsible to teach. In every other subject area, including arts, we have in Phi-Ed, and we even have them actually now for social emotional, right? We have a scope and a sequence. We have a sequence of skills that build on each other. We introduce that in one grade. We work with it in another grade. We might master it by the time we've seen it 3 times. We know that those build upon each other, and that's just not how WIDA envisions language, and so it's not how they built our standards, and I think it makes them really hard for teachers to use.
I would agree with her 100%. As a classroom teacher, when I'm teaching every subject, and then I have sort of these broad guidelines that don't align necessarily with my standards exactly, it was really hard for me to know how to best help those students with this specific skill or this specific standard. And so I can very much see where Kerri is coming from. That's kind of a frustration. But as hopefully as the ELL teacher, once I became the ELL teacher and understood more about language acquisition and the different levels and use the website more, it became a lot more clear. But I agree, it would be really nice to have that scope and sequence for classroom teachers, since that's where our ELL kids are for most of their day generally.
I like to do, when I do workshops, I like to spend some time in this document so that you start to have an idea about if you're asked in your classes to write a language objective, you kind of know how these standards work and you understand what kind of language might be used for level 1 or 2 that's different from a 4 or 5, what kind of supports you might include, but I just do think it's really hard to put into practice.